Hello and welcome to this episode of the Be Free podcast. So, this one has been a long time coming. Now, it's something I've spoken about on socials so many times, and it's something that I know that everybody, when I have shared about it, has been really keen to understand a little bit about how I cycle track, how you do it, what it's about, um, benefits, all that jazz. So I really wanted to share this with you, and apologize it's taken me so long, but it has taken me a little bit of insight, to do a little bit of research to do it justice for you guys as well. Um, so this process of cycle tracking I have been doing for a number of years, and interestingly, because I've just moved house and I've got all my old journals and things, I looked back at one of my old diaries from 2022, and I had started well, I've been cycle tracking for a lot longer than that, but the 2022 one was a great one to reflect on because this was just before I started HRT, so there was a lot going on with my cycle. And what I would say is if you're listening to this podcast, that you have a menstrual cycle and currently aren't cycle tracking, I would advise anybody, any age, to start cycle tracking as soon as possible. My daughter tracks her cycle. That's something that I'm quite passionate about sharing with her. And the more we can begin to understand our cycle, the more we can begin to understand ourselves, understand our own bodies. And for me, it's really built this kind of greater awareness of self, but also more compassion, right? More compassion for self, um, more self-love. It's enabled me to kind of speak confidently to healthcare providers around what's going on for me, understand my moods and emotions better, to plan my work and my life better, to support my friends' family better, and just really show up, I guess, as my authentic self and getting to know that. What I would say is this is not an overnight process. You're going to have to track more than one cycle to get any kind of true insight as to what's going on for you. And that's why I'm saying the longer you can do this for, the better. Like, so start as soon as possible. So I'm going to tell you a bit about an intro to kind of the menstrual cycle. If you don't have a menstrual cycle and you're listening to this, you can also track in alignment with the moon. Okay, so if you feel that you experience certain symptoms throughout the month, that your mood and emotions fluctuate throughout the month, but you don't actually have a menstrual cycle, you can still track, right? And you can use the 28-day cycle of the moon. I'm mostly going to speak into as if you have a menstrual cycle here, but equally this will be, or elements of it will be relevant if you wish to track your moods, emotions, physical symptoms, etc. with the moon, and also how we use our energy. So I really live in a cyclical way now. And for me, that just, is the best thing. As I navigate perimenopause and my energy fluctuates, I can begin to plan things in at moments that support me best. I now have an understanding of myself that I can explain to people, okay, could we do that the following week? And just know how I'm going to feel at certain points in time. Now, if you are navigating perimenopause, your cycle might be out of whack. And mine was before, I would like not have a period for like 40 days and then have one for a cycle of 14 days. 21 days was a common cycle for me. But, once we begin to track it, we can begin to see what's going on at various points. So, a little bit of our intro to the female cycle. When we're tracking our menstrual cycle, we start day one is day one of our bleed. So menstruation is day one. Now, not at the time, maybe where you're getting like a little bit of spotting or something like that. It's like when your bleed fully starts. So that is day one of your cycle. And the final day of your cycle is the day before your bleed starts again, right? And everybody's cycle will be different, and that is totally normal, right? There's very few people I would imagine would have a bang on 28-day cycle. Yeah, so you might have a standard like 28-day cycle. You could have a 21-day, like I mentioned. Maybe your period comes every 30 days, right? Know that this, like, there's no right, like, there's no set thing. So don't worry if your cycle isn't 28 days. So yeah, the other thing I would say, which is really, really fascinating, is because we are women and our hormones fluctuate so much, and I'm going to go into the 4 stages of our cycle and what goes on with our hormones at this time. But as women, our cycle, we have these 4 different stages where our hormones are doing all these different things. And if you want to check out my blog, I'm going to link that up in the show notes, or if you're watching this on YouTube, in the notes below. And you can see an image actually that I've shared in the blog of our cycle. And you'll see like how our estrogen and our progesterone and our testosterone are going up and down and like at various points throughout our cycle. Now, if you're a man, your cycle's 24 hours, right? So men reset, they'll go to bed, they'll wake up, they're reset, woohoo, right? So their baseline is pretty standard, like their moods, emotions, all that. They may be affected by the moon, right? But they're hormonally, they don't have this erratic cycle of hormones throughout the month. So for women to expect themselves to show up every day, day in, day out, with the same energy, the same cognition, the same clarity is a physical impossibility, right? Because we need certain hormones to support us with cognition, with energy, all these things on a cellular level. So cycle tracking isn't kind of like crazy woo-woo stuff, oh, like cyclical living. It's not crazy woo-woo. It's actually like working in alignment with our body and the cycles that our body is going through. So tracking our cycle can be really helpful. I used to do this before when I was trying for a baby because we had fertility issues. So this was something probably got a little bit hooked on back then. Can be helpful if you use it as a form of contraception, right? Can help you identify any hormonal imbalances, menstrual issues, any kind of changes, and just really getting to connect with your body on a deeper, more beautiful level. So, we're not taught these things. I think more like it is becoming more common now, but like back in the day, we weren't taught like, oh yeah, like it's just like, oh yeah, you're going to be grumpy because you've got your periods and you're probably going to experience pain. And yeah, like that was it. And you kind of hid it. You were almost like ashamed of it. Whereas now, I think it is being more and more spoken about. So let's get into these 4 parts. And as I said, this is just kind of like a brief intro to each of these areas, what you can expect in each part of the cycle, and how I would suggest you use that time. Now, I've popped a book below as well. If you are interested in working with your cycle, to really support you from an energy and time management point of view, which is what I do now, I highly recommend the book Do Less by Kate Northrup, and I've hooked that up below. That is an affiliate link to my Amazon account. So just putting that out there, I'll get like about 3p if you buy a book. I don't actually even know how much it is, but anyway, have to say that it's affiliate link. So if you do want to go and have a look at that, you can do that. I've also popped loads of supportive information in the show notes at the end of the blog and on this if you're watching on YouTube page. Okay, so these 4 parts, what I would say is it's great to have a little bit of an understanding, but please don't worry. Like if you're like, oh my God, I can't remember what stage this is and all that. Like when I started, I didn't actually really know. And still to this day, like I don't go 100% by this. I go more just by my own cycle and what's happening on what day. And I'll explain that a bit more as we kind of go through. So menstruation. So as I mentioned, this is day one. Our estrogen and progesterone are typically low. And that can make us like have like issues with our sleep, feel quite fatigued, low mood, low energy. However, this is such a time, a beautiful time of deep reflection, introspection, paying attention. Like I would say, pay attention to the thoughts you have when you're menstruating. Like write them down in a journal. And you know, you could, it's the time when your intuition is going to be so strong. Okay. So we can often try and dismiss, like, oh God, here I go moaning about that again or worrying about that again. Like, pay attention. Like, the messages you receive during menstruation are gold. Okay, so write them down in your journal, pay attention. If you don't have a cycle, this is the equivalent of the new moon. Okay, so the dark moon, the time of yeah, the moon, you know, not really being able to see it in the sky. So this is the time I use kind of to rest, recover. You're probably going to feel less sociable, so don't try and plan. Like I'm actually recording this podcast on my bleed, and I wouldn't typically do that, but it just felt really appropriate that I was kind of blogging and writing about this to share it at this time. But typically I wouldn't plan things where I'm like facing the camera and all those things because it's a time where like I don't know about anybody else where but I don't feel particularly confident during my menstrual time. And that is because that progesterone and estrogen are low and you're kind of like have that almost like a little bit of self-doubt and reflection. So use that time to rest, reflect, take a nice Epsom salt bath, relax those muscles, cleanse that energy. Next stage is your follicular stage, which would be classed as a waxing crescent moon if we're going by the moon. So your estrogen and testosterone begin to rise after your bleed. And you know, it's like you'll sometimes get that day where you're like, oh my God, I'm beginning to feel human again, right? So your energy will be increasing. You'll be feeling more confident. This is a great time to start new things, to plan things, to start like your cognition is going to be better. So you can start kind of like brainstorming, getting ideas together. Your memory is going to be better because your hormones are rising. Sometimes people can feel a little bit anxious at this time just because the estrogen is rising. But yeah, I like to use this time to begin to plan based on the insight from my menstrual time. So whatever's coming up for me then, I will pop in. Now, as I say, as I'm saying this out loud, I didn't start out this way, and I will share how I started out, but this is like the point I'm at now and how I use it. And so just showing you how valuable it can be. Okay, so follicular time, testosterone rising, great time to plan, all of that jazz. Then we move on to ovulation. So this is the time, if you think about it, like if you're wanting to ovulate, what are you like? Ovulation is there to get pregnant, right? How are you going to be feeling at that time? You're probably going to feel like you want to put yourself out there more. You'll be feeling more confident, more radiant. So, you know, it's a great time for scheduling interviews, doing presentations, things like that. What I would say is at the start of this, like the ovulation week, like week 3, you can get a little bit of PMS-y type symptoms. And I have noticed that myself, like around the full moon, like I'm bleeding on the new moon just now, and sometimes around the full moon, or like vice versa. But when I'm ovulating, sometimes I get those PMS-y symptoms and can feel just like a little bit anxious. And just know that like as the week goes on, that typically just goes. Great time for networking, being sociable, putting yourself out there. You know, when you think about menstruation, you want to hide away under your blanket, stay cozy. And the ovulation time is like hey, I'm here. So we can use it in that kind of way. Then after ovulation, we move to the luteal phase, which is the waning crescent moon. So this is like typically week 4. Your estrogen and progesterone will begin to start dropping, or your estrogen begins to start dropping, which can lead to PMS type symptoms. So if you think about the week before you bleed, some people really struggle with PMS type symptoms. Sore boobs, anxiety, lower mood, your energy will begin to start to drop, and can be a little bit more moody. So use this time to I use this time for things like doing my accounts, like finalizing things, closing things off, finishing projects. Certainly would not be starting anything new at this time. Like this is a time of just like crossing the T's, dotting the I's. It took me a minute to process that. I was like, dot the I's. Yeah, that's right. So we can be a little bit more prone to kind of being negative about ourselves at this time, having like being a little bit cynical. So I would say at this time, it really is about closing things off. Now, I would like to add, sometimes some people have more energy at the new moon, sometimes more people have energy at the full moon. And this is why I'm saying track your own cycle. Don't 100% go by this. I'm going to show you how I track my cycle. And for those of you that are listening, then I'm just going to explain that. So at the front of my diary, like my planner, we have this like month to view section, or year to view section. At the start of my diary, it's actually like 6 months. And all you have is like the date, the month, and a tiny little bit. And this is all you need. Now, I really encourage you to do this on paper. Reason being, it makes it a lot more easy to interpret if you just want a quick glance. And I have listed some apps and stuff below that can support you in cycle tracking. But honestly, this is like, I've tried apps to try and make this, a bit more organized, all those things. It doesn't work as effectively. So really just get like a month, like a 6 month to view or a year to view planner, and you just need like a tiny space. So what you're going to do is say your bleed starts today, which is the 8th of May as I'm recording this. So I'd go to my planner, 8th of May, write 1, just the number 1 at the side. So, it's not going to take up too much space. Now, I tend so when I first started, I would log like everything, like how I was feeling, and you don't have to do this every day. So you can just maybe write down the days that you're feeling amazing and the days that you're feeling really poop, and work that way. So let's have a look here this is my one from 2022. So August the 1st, 2022 was day 26 of my cycle. Fatigue, tight, emotional, chest pain. So this was me like pre-HRT. And as you can imagine, day 26 in your cycle is that like PMS-y kind of stage. And then from days 1 of my cycle to days 10 of my cycle there, actually I haven't written anything. But then day 11, I put anxious, chest pain. 12, did not feel myself, chest pain. 13, chest pain. So that would have been around the time that I mentioned, like sometimes the first start of our ovulation, we can maybe get some of those PMS-y symptoms. This is like the perfect example, by the way. And then by like day 14, 15, I've got confident. So it just shows you, but the more you begin to track it, you can begin to tune in. So for me, with my perimenopause, I started to really, really heavily struggle with anxiety and depression, like really dark depression. And I feel emotional speaking about that. That's why you shouldn't record when you're in your menstrual phase. But I knew, because I cycle tracked, that this was only happening on certain days of the month, right? You know, this was only happening on, well, here we go, day 25 and day 26. This is like a different month, and I've just spoken to, that was August. This is in December the same year, day 25 and 26. There's October the same year, 25, 26, you know. And so I knew, so I was going to the doctor and I would say like, oh my gosh, like I know it's related to my cycle. I was getting pelvic issues at certain times in the month. I was like, I had all these different things, but because I'd cycle tracked, I knew that it was when my estrogen, the times when my estrogen was dropping, that I would face this anxiety and depression. And it was such a gift to me to be able to do that, you know. And the doctor, you know, initially was just like, no, like I think you're just depressed. I think we need to give you some antidepressants. And I'm like, no, because there's times in the month where I feel me and I feel great. But they were convinced no, and then I got sent for some pelvic stuff, and then it took a long time until I got to a really, really, really dark place, and my husband took me to the doctor, and we just begged and begged to try HRT, because I obviously was aware that it was my hormones, but I wasn't really being listened to. And about 6 weeks after starting my HRT, I felt like me again. And a lot of those symptoms of chest pain, of dark depression, of anxiety, of palpitations, of aches and pains in my joints, like all these different things disappeared because my hormones were beginning to get balanced again. So I don't take this process lightly. It's such a powerful tool. And now, as I mentioned, like, you know, I use it to manage my business. I use it to manage my social calendar and diary. And yeah, like you just need to prioritize like a few months and you will begin to start seeing and identifying patterns. So yeah, I've popped some links below that might support you. I've also popped the links to 2 previous podcasts I did with Michelle Walsh, who is the happy hormone coach. And one is on cycle syncing, and one is on the pillars of female health and working with our cycles. So I really hope that they support you, that you can check in with them. I've linked up my planner that I use, my Sassy planner, that I just use the front pages. It's not specifically for cycle tracking. It's just a normal diary that you can just like see quite easily 6 months at a time at the front pages. So that's what I use that for. And what I would say is I am going to be releasing my own planner, which will be based around, it's not purely about cyclical living. It's actually about supporting people with anxiety and overwhelm and stress. But there will be a section at the front where you can do exactly what I'm doing here with tracking your cycle as well. So sign up to my mailing list to know when that's going to be available. It's there. It's in the back burner. And again, it's something that's been there for years and it is coming. It is coming. I know it will be birthed. It will be birthed soon. So yeah, so I hope that that's really supported you. Hope that that makes sense. This is my diary just now. I'll show you if you're on the YouTube or that. So you see, they still do it. I track each day, write down, and as I say, I just find it really helpful. So say there's a day that I am feeling anxious, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm so anxious. And I look at my diary and then I can reflect back and be like, okay, that's just because you're on day such and such of your cycle. Look at the other months. You know that by tomorrow, you're probably going to be absolutely fine. This isn't going to last forever. And I found that really beneficial for that. So there you go. It's only taken me like, I don't know how long to share this. But yeah, grab Kate Northrup's book, have a read through the podcast. I've a read through the blog. I'll link up the blog to this as well. So that if you want to just kind of get your head around it a little bit more, I've shared pictures of my diary in the blog, and I've also shared an image of the female hormone cycle, which might help you get your head around the fluctuations a bit more. And yeah, it's been great to connect with you on this subject. Let me know, do comment, rate, review. I would love if you could share it with your loved ones, share it with your friends. I think the more people know about this, the better. It help us identify any kind of changes that are going on for us. And also, as I say, just really getting to know yourself better. So you're not fighting with yourself, that you're loving yourself, you're showing compassion with yourself, and you just, yeah, get that better awareness. So with so much love from my heart to yours, I'm sending you all the good vibes. And I will be back next week as we chat sobriety. So I've got a mini series coming up for you all around sobriety, where I'm interviewing people who various stages of their sobriety journey. And yeah, I can't wait to share that with you. I know it's a topic that so many people are curious about or have started their journey. And yeah, we're just going to share the challenges, the reasons, and all the benefits that people have experienced. Okay. See you next week. Bye.